What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero. The history the government hopes you never learn. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show today. It's Wednesday, March 29th, 2017, almost to the end of the month here. And we have got a lot of stuff to talk about today. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. Mike is in our control room, ready to answer the phone when you call on in. A little bit of a kerfuffle earlier today in our nation's capital. Apparently a woman drove her vehicle into a U.S. Capitol Police cruiser. Not sure if it was an accident or intentional. Turned around, fled, struck another car, was taken into custody during the course of the chase. Shots were fired. They're not exactly clear whether it was the police or whether she was firing, but it gave the news something to look at, and apparently the shots were fired near the Botanic Gardens in Washington, D.C., so that was a little bit of upset. The big news, though, and you're not going to see this on the corporate media. Corporate media was going ballistic over the shooting at our nation's capital. Oh, my goodness. We have seen in recent months this constant pounding, Russia hacked the DNC computers, Russia hacked the election, just on and on and on. Came from the Hillary campaign, came from the Democrats, came from the liberal snowflakes, the whiners, the corporate media, nonstop. Russia hacked the election, Russia hacked the election. Even though the indications were that the DNC emails were an internal leak, quite possibly by Seth Rich, who was killed under strange circumstances shortly thereafter. But what's really going on here is the entire case rests on this one company called CrowdStrike. And CrowdStrike worked for the DNC, and they are the ones who said Russia broke into the Democratic computers. We know it for a fact. We're experts in this field. Now, the FBI was not allowed to look at the servers. They were just asked to take CrowdStrike's word for it. The corporate media just take CrowdStrike's word for it, and everybody ran on it. And they've been treating it like it's an absolute, unquestionable fact that Russia hacked the DNC. Now, CrowdStrike's credibility in this claim rested on their claim that they had used the same methodology to prove that Russia had hacked into the Ukraine's military computers and were able to carry out some mischief there involving howitzers. Unfortunately, other computer security companies around the world, other experts have been looking at CrowdStrike's work and saying it's completely bogus. Their methodology is flawed. They don't really know what they're doing. And as a result, as of today, CrowdStrike has revived and retracted statements regarding this Ukrainian situation on which it based its claim that it was certain Russia hacked the DNC emails. This is big, big news. CrowdStrike has destroyed their own credibility. They're not able to find Russian hackers either in Ukraine, and because they made a big point of saying we used the same methodology, we found these hacker names like Teddy Bear or something nonsensical like that. Their entire case that Russia hacked the DNC has just evaporated. It's just evaporated. And Hillary's campaign, the Democratic liberals, the corporate media just had the rug yanked out from under them. And they're all tumbling around and trying to figure out what they're going to do now because the entire case for Russian hacking just evaporated. And now we've got members of the Democratic Party in Congress are out there trying to recover by saying, okay, CrowdStrike was wrong, but we know the Russians did it because this, and they're trying to use all these coincidences and suppositions. They're trying to build a circumstantial case. They're raising on a busted flush here. They're raising on a busted flush. They've got nothing. They have got absolutely nothing to back up this ridiculous story. And that's probably the reason why we've been seeing this incredible pressure to get Nunes away from the Russia investigation, because they know he's not going to find anything. Nunes is going to stay. Now we have rumors that the Democrats on the Intelligence Committee may choose to not participate. They're just going to walk out the door. So long, goodbye, you were just getting in the way anyway. At which point, of course, the Democrats will scream that this is obviously a GOP witch hunt. That's a GOP, it's highly partisan. Well, the only reason it's partisan is because the Democrats are interfering and getting out. I mean, it's all falling apart here. So now with the big Trump-Russia scandal lying in pieces on the floor, it's time to go on back to those scandals where there actually is evidence of what happened, and Donald Trump is back out there on Twitter saying it's time to start investigating the Clintons. We're going to do a quick shout out to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining the network, and we started our show today with the complete discrediting of CrowdStrike's claim that Russia hacked the DNC or the election. That's now in tatters. They've blown their own credibility wide open. And so now it's time to just stop all this hue and cry over this complete hallucination of Russian hacking the DNC or Russia hacking the election. And remember, all the election fraud that was ever found favored Hillary Clinton. So the story just doesn't make any sense at all. Russia hacked the election to help Donald Trump, but every hack found helped Hillary Clinton. So Donald Trump is out there on the warpath. He's out there on Twitter, and I presume he's probably making a few phone calls over to Attorney General Sessions, saying it is time to start investigating the scandals involving the Clinton Foundation, the email server for which there is evidence, more than evidence. FBI Director Comey admitted in that public hearing where they said we're not going to bring any charges, no reasonable prosecutor who wants to stay alive would bring charges against the Clintons. But he admitted in that hearing Title 18 felony violations committed by Hillary Clinton. And that's where the focus needs to go on. Trump is out there pointing out the hypocrisy of this Russian interference investigation while just pretending that the Uranium One deal didn't exist, where Hillary Clinton, as Secretary of State, facilitated the sale of 20% of America's uranium resources to a company that is jointly owned by Russia. At the same time, Russian money was just pouring into the Clinton Foundation. It's criminal levels of corruption. And the Democrats in Congress and the Republicans who are compromised by the CIA just looking around, we don't see anything here. We don't see it. We don't hear it. You can't make us. Nya, 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 nya. The Democrats are starting to look like those three monkeys. Hear no evil, see no evil, speak no evil. But it's obvious that there's been crimes by Hillary and by Obama. In fact, Army Chief Lieutenant General Thomas McInerney, I'll get it right one of these tries, says he is of the opinion Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton are in clear violations of the Espionage Act, if for no other reason than they're spying on the Trump administration for political gain. Because it's now, if there is no Russia-Trump connection, if there is no Russia tampering with the election, if there is no Russia hacking the DNC, then the entire reason for the Obama administration and Hillary's campaign to spy on Donald Trump was for political gain. It is Watergate all over. It is Watergate enhanced. It is Watergate on steroids. And the general is basically saying that he thinks Hillary and Obama came up with all this stuff about trying to link Donald Trump to Russia purely as a distraction from their own links to Russia. And yes, that's exactly what they were doing. Now then, Judge Napolitano, good news. As of this morning, he is back on the air over at Fox. He is sticking with his story that the British helped Obama and Hillary spy on Donald Trump. So he won this round against Fox News. And, of course, Fox News has got very high ratings right now compared to the other corporate media, and Napolitano is one of the reasons. And I'm sure that Fox wants to be on his good side with the possibility that Napolitano might actually get nominated to the United States Supreme Court. Now, Trump is back out on Twitter launching an attack on the failing New York Times. Just days after giving the paper an exclusive interview about the failure of the health care program, and basically reminding everybody about the time the New York Times apologized to its subscribers about the biased coverage during the election, which we all saw. And apparently something, once again, the New York Times did something, got underneath Trump's skin. And he ended by saying, if the people of our great country could only see how viciously and inaccurately my administration is covered by certain media, and it is, and Mr. Trump or whoever is listening to this show on his behalf, it's time to take the next step and see how viciously and inaccurately all of U.S. history and world history is misreported by the media. Because my biggest complaint against Donald Trump right now is that too much of his worldview is based on what he got from corporate media. And that's all an illusion. He obviously knows the corporate media lied about him. It is time for Donald Trump to make that next mental step and say, what else has the media been lying to us about? Israel versus Palestine? Certainly. 9/11? Absolutely. Vaccine safety? Definitely. GMO safety? Yes. It's time to look at all of that and realize that the corporate media is one of the greatest enemies to the American people within our own borders. And let us not forget, the anti-Semitism surge was out there a couple of weeks ago in the corporate media saying, oh, there's a surge in anti-Semitism. You, the president, must do something about it. You've got to pass laws giving more protection and more privileges to Jews and taking rights away from everybody else. And Trump came on out and said, look, this could all be a hoax. And the media excoriated him. You know, I think if the corporate media could have found some way to actually grab him and publicly flog him, they probably would have done it. How dare you say that anti-Semitism is a hoax? And then, of course, we have that Jewish student who was arrested for all those phone threats about bombs to the Jewish centers. The only anti-Semitism were the hate crime hoaxes and a willing corporate media willing to push this hoax as a fact. And the corporate media were wrong, and Donald Trump was right. And it's another reason why Donald Trump needs to take a very, very good look at the corporate media and what they've been lying to him and to us about all along. Now, remember that Fox News synthetic bovine growth hormone lawsuit? And it revealed something very startling about corporate media in the United States of America. For those who are not familiar with this, Fox News assigned a couple of reporters to do a puff piece on Monsanto's new synthetic bovine growth hormone that Monsanto would come up with. They'd shoot it into cows. The cows would get bigger, produce more meat, produce more milk. Everybody goes home happy. And the reporters discovered that consumers who were consuming the meat and dairy products from the treated cows were coming down with all kinds of weird medical ailments. And they wanted to put that in the story and raise the alarm about it. And, of course, Monsanto, which spends a huge amount of money on advertising all over the media, came on in and said, no, don't you do that. So Fox News ordered the reporters to change the story and take out the health concerns. The reporters refused, and Fox News fired them. And the reporters sued, and they lost on appeal when the judge ruled that there is no law that compels the corporate media to tell the truth to their audience, to their readership, to their viewers. None. Therefore, the management of corporate media can order the prostitutes and the correspondents to lie to you. And if the prostitutes and correspondents refuse to lie to you, they can be legally fired for cause. And that tells you all you need to know about the corporate media today. I think one of the best things Donald Trump could do is push for a law that says, yes, the corporate media must be truthful with the American people. That was the implicit deal in that First Amendment freedom of the press, to allow the media to tell the truth without fear of repercussion. What we need now is a law that has a fear of repercussion for lying to the public. Honest error, we understand that will happen. But deliberate lies, we the people ought to have a right to sue the corporate media when they lie to us about things like Saddam's nuclear weapons, or Assad's sarin gas, or vaccines are perfectly safe, or GMO is good for you, or any of the other thousands and thousands of hoaxes, frauds, and deceptions that we are fed day after day after day after day. Hillary Clinton has surfaced again, and apparently she raised a few eyebrows because she was wearing this very bizarre purple suit. All of a sudden, purple is their color. Imperial purple, the color of the emperors. And she was described as dressing like the Joker from the Batman comic books. And came on out calling for resistance of the new administration and saying Trump's policies are putting pressure on illegal immigrants and refugees, and it's putting pressure on voter suppression and all this other stuff, which is all actually true, but that's what's supposed to happen. Secure borders, vetting of refugees, and yes, we need to address the vote fraud issue in this country before the next election. And she's all out there screaming like these are bad things. But Hillary's out there attacking every single thing Trump has done. Then she goes after Sean Spicer because apparently Spicer had an argument with April Ryan, and Ryan was just refusing to let go of her liberal ideology and shaking her head, and Sean Spicer said, that's an indignity in this office. And that was it. And Hillary's out there saying, oh my goodness, it's an attack on women. Look, he's mansplaining again. He's doing this. Hillary Clinton just set a new standard for sore loser. Michael Moore is out there with a he's gone over the top. Shark, meet Michael Moore. Michael Moore, meet Shark. Michael Moore is out there saying that Donald Trump is going to bring about the extinction of human life. That President Donald Trump is an extinction-level event. Now, you need to understand something about the human-caused global warming hoax. All of the people who were involved in it are invested in the companies that make money off the global warming hoax. Renewable energy companies, even though they're failing left and right, they do make money for a while, and they're seeing their investments drop in value because of Donald Trump's executive order. And so they're on the warpath. How dare you cut off the money I'm making off this hoax? You're a threat to all mankind. Now, Maxine Waters, who is rapidly becoming the best argument for competency testing for all legislators, actually got up on the House floor and ranted about how anybody supporting Donald Trump is being unpatriotic. Think about that for just a minute. According to Maxine Waters, if you support the President of the United States of America, you are being unpatriotic. That's where Maxine is coming from. Noam Chomsky, who's flying over that shark with Michael Moore, is out there saying Trump may stage a false flag terror attack to build his support and change the government fundamentally. Well, we know that the New World Order are doing that all over the place, and we expect them to try that here. But, oh, no. Chomsky's, no, it's going to be Trump. Donald Trump is going to do the false flag, not us. We would never do a thing like that. Yes, one of our guys was phoning in the bomb threats to the Jewish centers, but we would never, ever do a false flag attack. Well, yes, we did attack the USS Liberty, but that was long ago. I mean, it really is amazing. Now, just think about something. 20 months of opposition research on Donald Trump, and all they've got on him are these fake Russia charges. You think about that for a minute. We'll be right back after these words from our sponsors. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. And we should be at the point where Americans are beginning to realize that with precious few exceptions, such as Cynthia McKinney, Dr. Ron Paul, Donald Trump himself, the overwhelming majority of people who are seeking these positions of power and authority are doing so with criminal intent. Former Congressman Steve Stockman, Republican from Houston, has been indicted on numerous charges related to receiving donations under false pretenses. Why aren't they going after Hillary on that one? His aide is also accused of using a nonprofit entity to secure donations for Stockman's campaign. Again, we should go over to Hillary with that one. And apparently it's a 28-count indictment. They are crooks. Most of them get away with it. The dumb ones do not. All right, let's go over to the war zones because there's a lot of stuff going on over there. It is beginning to look more and more like the United States is getting ready to partition Syria. The U.S. forces have reached a certain point that lines up with the proposed border of that part of the new Kurdistan, and they have halted. They're standing right there. And this is such a hypocritical development because apparently it's perfectly okay to break Syria into pieces, but Russia stole Crimea. We don't recognize the right of the Crimean people to vote for independence and to vote to merge with Russia. Therefore, Russia stole them. We have to respect the boundaries of the country. Remember when Obama actually said that when all of this stuff was going down about Crimea going away, and Obama is saying we're going to ignore the vote for independence. We have to respect the boundaries of nations. Well, not really doing it with Syria, are we? And by the way, the new Kurdistan is also going to carve off chunks of Turkey and Iraq. How about respecting their national borders? It's rather ridiculous here. Now, panic is spreading in both Iraq and Syria. Apparently, the escalating U.S. airstrikes are killing record numbers of civilians. And you're not going to see that on the corporate media. They're still obsessing about the poor victims of the terrorists over there in Westminster near Parliament. Oh, we should all feel sorry for them. What about all of these civilians who are being killed in Iraq and Syria? Who cares about them? You shouldn't care about them. Don't care about. You care about the people we tell you to care about. I actually got an email from a listener the other day saying that the civilian death toll from just the most recent U.S. strike into Iraq was larger than the population of his entire town. And that tells you a lot about what's going on. All right, we're going to start some phone calls here. Linda in Newfoundland, and I may have to take you through the commercial break. What's on your mind?
Yes, I got a comment about the color revolution, how it's purple. What I think it is the coming together of Democrats and Republicans, red and blue, to take out Trump. And put them two together, colors together, you got purple.
Makes perfect sense to me.
What do you think of that?
Makes perfect sense to me. I said it makes sense.
Thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I said,
comment ahead, and I'll take your response off the air.
Okay. Well, basically, my first response was imperial purple, like you would see with the Caesars. But you could be absolutely right. This symbolizes the Republicans and Democrats coming together to oust this uppity President Donald Trump, who was the choice of the American people, because we don't let the American people choose the rulers of this country. It's just upsetting to all those money junkies. But you're absolutely right. That could be the intended symbolism right there.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. So thank you very much. It's first-time caller, so I'm a bit nervous. So I'm going to get off the air now.
All right, no reason to be nervous. I can't bite your head off from this far away over the wire.
No, you're in Hawaii. I'm way over in Newfoundland. But, okay, thank you very much. Have a good show.
Thank you very much. But, you know, obviously Hillary intended to wear that color and that outfit, because if you look at how Hillary has always dressed, and you look at the outfit she was wearing for this speech, what a bizarre contrast.
Day, too,
yeah.
Right after the elections, the next morning, her and Bill were wearing purple in their lapels.
Yeah, and
remember?
Critics said she looked like she was dressed like the Joker from Batman. We're going to let you go, Linda. Take a break for commercials. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. We're going to take another phone call. Brendan in San Francisco, welcome back to the show. What's on your mind today?
Brendan? It's Comrade Brendan.
Okay.
Mike, I'm just sitting here wondering why Trump and Putin don't have a meeting publicly and just squash all this Russian narrative nonsense. It's clear that it's a whole distraction. We're looking over to the left, and they're bombing the heck out of Iraq on the right. Why don't they just settle this? This is just nonsense. We're wasting too much time on this.
Mm-hmm.
And Putin and all his corporate buddies could say, yeah, we've been dealing with the Clintons and the Podestas, and they're total scumbags, and here you go. And just end that. Well,
the problem with that is twofold. Trump's already denied all this stuff, and of course the Democrats and the corporate media are saying, well, of course he's going to deny it. It proves he's guilty. He's denying it. And the same thing would apply to Putin. And again, if they were to have a meeting and go public and say, this is what's going on, the Democrats and the corporate media say, see, they're teaming up. We told you there was a connection. We told you they were in cahoots. It's a no-win situation. And Trump and Putin just need to sort of ride this out with dignity, because the whole case for this Russia stuff is falling apart, with CrowdStrike literally having to pull back and admit they were wrong in their methodology. That was the entire foundation for all this screaming we've been seeing about Russia hacked the DNC. And I think now would be a time to go on back and say, we need to take another look at Seth Rich, what he was doing for the DNC, and why it was that he got killed near his house at 4 o'clock in the morning.
Right, but you know there's going to be a paper trail, particularly if there's stocks that have been traded as compensation to Podesta. There is a paper trail, and the point I'm trying to make is I'm looking at like Democracy Now!, which I stopped listening to after the campaign when I saw what they were doing to Trump. But they're still calling it like supposed and using these terms, like still trying to emphasize that there's fact to some Russian narrative. And so I'm assuming other corrupt media are doing the same thing. So long as they can keep their people in their ghettos in the mind of what's happening, they're furthering their agenda. Whereas if they produce papers saying, look at all the stock transactions and the uranium, and these documents, I'm sure, have signatures, and Russia would just simply produce them and say, this is what happened, enough of this. And then we can look at Trump now and say, stop continuing the Obama agenda in Iraq and bombing the heck out of these poor folks. I mean,
let me cut in here in a little bit and address a couple of things you've said. First of all, there already is a paper trail regarding Podesta. He's looking at jail time for lying on his disclosure forms. The question is, somebody's got to make the decision to go ahead and prosecute him. There's certainly a paper trail about the Uranium One deal. Again, it's just getting support to go after and prosecute the various people. And so we don't need to worry about the paper trail. It exists. As far as the corporate media is concerned, though, they will never, ever report it, because they are pushing the agenda. And they're going to go on lying about Russia hacking the DNC and Russia hacking the election, even in the absence of any evidence whatsoever. They're going to try and use rumor and innuendo. We've already got Adam, what's his name, is up there in Congress trying to create a purely circumstantial case for stuff that was going on about this. And it really has reached ridiculous points. I'm beginning to think Sean Spicer may actually read my website, because over the last couple of months you saw me do up this little cartoon with Donald Trump at dinner with a bottle of Russian dressing on the table. And I did one with Hillary saying, we've got proof of the Russian connection. And I did a more recent version with Rachel Maddow, say, oh, we've got proof of the Russian connection. And Sean Spicer actually took the White House press corps to task today, saying, you guys are looking for Russian connections anywhere. If Donald Trump used Russian dressing, you'd say that was the Russian connection. And you know how petty and desperate and pathetic the corporate media have become? You know, they're out there now saying, well, Mr. Spicer, Russian dressing isn't really from Russia. It's from Nashua, New Hampshire. And they only call it Russia. And see, you are completely... And it's so totally beside the point of what Spicer was trying to say, but that's how the corporate media is operating.
I know that someone's been listening to your show because during the campaign, I was the first person that I recall mentioning waste, fraud, and abuse to fund some of these things that Trump was planning on doing. And the very next day, I heard out of Trump's mouth waste, fraud, and abuse. And people could go back and look this up. And I thought, hey, man, this is fantastic. Someone's listening. And that's why I'm so miffed at Trump for just throwing more money at the Pentagon and saying, why don't we even just question where some of these trillions of dollars are gone missing? There's a frustration there on my part. And then just these exploits in Iraq again. We're following the playbook of the past administration. It's very frustrating now to watch this go down.
Okay, yeah, it is very, very frustrating. It's intensely so. All righty.
Hey, Mike.
All right. All right, we're going to let you go here, and we're going to switch over to Laura in Michigan. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. I wanted to ask you a question.
Yeah.
I vaguely remember a couple of years ago that there were bugs found in the congressional cloakroom, and nobody has mentioned that. Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah. We were talking about it just yesterday. It was when the CIA was caught bugging the Congress during the hearings into the use of torture in Iraq. And more than that, they tried to break into the computers of the investigating committee and delete the evidence.
Right. I think that should be brought up more. People don't, remember that. They got to realize how dirty the CIA actually is.
Oh, absolutely. Up to their neck in drug running, assassination, and totally rogue, totally out of control of the civilian government right now.
And Donald Trump has got to clean out those spooks. Also, what the public needs, we need to see a few people doing a perp walk with orange jumpsuits and handcuffs.
I agree with you on that one. I absolutely agree with you on that one.
Yep. I think that would give a big boost to everybody if they could see that happening.
Would certainly improve my spirits, and definitely would want to see that happen. Again, though, you have to walk a very fine line because you're dealing with scandals and secrets of such a severe nature that it could destroy the government in the eyes of the American people. And that's why you will have everybody joining ranks to keep these secrets hidden. Even worst enemies will cooperate together because they want to keep their jobs, they want to keep the paychecks, they want to keep the power and the privilege and all the corruption. They want the corrupt system to keep on going because it benefits them so much. And again, they're all saying, well, if Hillary was outed as committing espionage as Secretary of State, I'm going to lose my job. So even though I can't stand the side of Hillary Clinton, I'm going to try and help keep this covered up. That's what the mechanism that's going on. Okay?
Okay, exactly. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. We're going to let you go and get on back to the news here. Apparently, the Syrian Arab Army and National Defense Forces have recaptured the villages of Jub Mahdi, Zakia, and Razm al-Kamish Ash-Sharpi from the ISIS terrorists in the Deir Hafer Plain, and this is in the northern province of Aleppo. Aleppo itself is kind of calming down. They're pushing northward. They're advancing on the Jira military air base. They're going to recapture that. Now, over in Homs, 500 of the formerly U.S.-backed terrorists have accepted Bashar al-Assad's pardon, his amnesty deal. They've laid their arms down. They're going back to civilian life and offend no more. So this is going to be over very, very quickly. But as I said before, we're seeing indications that the U.S. is going to simply go on in there with a big knife and carve off a huge chunk of Syria, whether they're going to call it a safe zone or a buffer zone or whatever all else. They're going to carve it on out and save it to be part of the eventual Kurdistan. And again, the hypocrisy and double standard is stunning because remember when Obama said we must respect the borders of nations. They're inviolable when he was talking about Crimea. And yet here we have the U.S. getting ready to carve out chunks from Syria, Turkey, and Iraq to create a new Kurdistan. So again, it's all double standards. It's all gobbledygook. It's all double talk here. And I'm not the only one thinking so. Russia insider, U.S. proxy set stage for Syria balkanization. And that's certainly something that Israel has been lobbying for. Israel wants all of the neighboring countries in the Middle East to be broken up into little tiny nations smaller than Israel itself is, so that Israel can push them around with the threat of nuclear annihilation. And it's a very, very tense situation, because right now, according to an article in 12160.info, Russian and American troops are within hand grenade range of each other in Syria. One mistake, one lost temper, one reckless moment, and we're going to have open warfare between Russian and American troops. This thing is a disaster waiting to happen. Now, Russia is asking the United Nations Security Council to do something about the recent deadly U.S. airstrike on Mosul that killed more than 200 civilians. Because it is a war crime. When you just go on in there and you're dropping bombs and you're not picking your targets, and Russia has a right to go to the Security Council. Unfortunately, as long as the United States has a veto there, nothing will be done. But Russia's trying to play by the rules here in the face of a country which has abandoned all rules. We're going to take another phone call. Ramsey in Canada, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hello, sir. How are you?
I'm fine.
You see, sir, I want to ask you a question. See, I don't watch much television. Like most of the time, I'm on the road working and all that. But see, sir, I called in on Sunday. I spoke to one of the RBN hosts, and he said that it's been proven that the Russians hacked into the election. And then I asked him, and he didn't. He told me called me from the FBI, gave a speech, and he proved everything. And I told him I haven't heard anything like that. Can you comment on that? Is that true?
No, what Comey did was he came on out and said that he was willing to accept the word of this CrowdStrike company that Russia hacked the DNC computers, because the Hillary campaign refused to allow the FBI's own technical experts to conduct their own forensic investigation. And now, of course, Comey's got egg all over his face with the revelation that CrowdStrike is now admitting their methodology was flawed. They had no real foundation for saying Russia was behind any of this stuff they accused Russia of doing. And so Comey's got egg on his face, and now it's time to start asking serious questions. Okay? You're the FBI. You are supposed to be investigating, not sitting back and letting some private company that is financially tied to the object of the investigation to come in and tell you, oh, it's all Russia's fault. And if I were Donald Trump, I would seize on this as being justification to replace Comey at this point. Prior to this moment, if Trump fired Comey for obviously not being supportive of Donald Trump, everybody would say, oh, it's Archibald Cox and Nixon all over again. But with this huge embarrassment, where the FBI did not actually investigate the claim of Russian hacking of the DNC, but merely took the word of a company working for Hillary Clinton, which has now discredited itself, that, to me, would be grounds to ask for Comey's resignation.
You see, sir, so the person who told me that on RBN on Sunday is wrong then? Like,
yes.
Russia didn't... there's no proof that Russia did anything.
No, there's no proof whatsoever.
And also, sir, I've learned from RBN, I was just reading it this morning, like, while I was on my break, actually in the early afternoon. Comey got paid $6-7 million from the Clinton Foundation.
I hadn't heard that. That's a rather interesting piece of information.
Yeah, I read that on the RBN. And also, sir, another quick question. Russia, like I forget what's the company called, but it was a Russian company, a Russian agency or whatever.
Uranium One.
They gave money to Paul Manafort. Sorry?
Uranium One. That was the name of the joint Canadian-Russian company that acquired the rights to 20% of America's uranium resources in this deal. Okay?
And sir, yeah, because you said I've heard that Paul Manafort got money from a company like that, right?
I'm not sure of the fine details of it. I'm not sure where he fits in on that. Okay?
But see, sir, my question is, Paul Manafort getting money from Russia, as long as it doesn't harm the United States security or international law or anything like that, then Paul Manafort is fine. Because media is saying Paul Manafort is like the devil because he got money from Russia.
Well, that's the current political climate. Anybody getting any money from Russia, except for Hillary Clinton, is denounced as a Russian stooge.
Yeah, and the same nonsense they said about Flynn.
Yes. Okay?
Thank you, sir.
All right, we're going to let you go here. Thank you very much for the phone call. Now, the war in Yemen, I'm not even going to call it a war. It's a slaughter. Saudi Arabia is leading it. They've been provided weapons, including depleted uranium weapons by the United States of America. It's a slaughter. It's an extermination. It's a genocide. It's now entering its third year, and the Pentagon is trying to up the ante yet again, because by golly, when we overthrow your democratically elected government and put in a puppet ruler, you will learn to love that puppet ruler, and you will serve that puppet ruler. And if you try and become free again, by golly, we're going to do all kinds of bad things to your country. Apparently, the Pentagon is now asking for deliveries of lethal weapons from the United States directly to Ukraine. There's another example of an absolute failed U.S. foreign policy disaster. And now they want to start giving lethal weapons to Ukraine to use against the Donbass. Meanwhile, the Donbass residents are asking world leaders to stop Ukraine. So that situation is just spiraling completely out of control. Now, we're coming up on a commercial break. And when we come on back, more news, more phone calls here. I tell you, the world, it feels like it's going crazy. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. Now, apparently, over in Russia, Federation Council Speaker Valentina Matvienko is saying that Russian-U.S. relations are at a record low. Gee, I wonder who brought that about. And I'll give you a hint. Who is it who got upset when Putin took direct control of Russia's private central bank in order to run Russia's public currency as a public utility? Clue number 2. Who has been openly longing for a return to the glorious days of the Cold War when they could wave Russians at us and we would soil our pants and salute the flag and fling our money and the lives of our children into whatever war we were told we needed to be doing so at that time, whether it was Vietnam or wherever. If relations between Russia and the United States are at a record low, it's definitely coming from the U.S. side. Now, Vladimir Putin has welcomed a huge Iranian delegation to the Grand Kremlin Palace. And they're going to have comprehensive talks with Putin and other members of the Russian leadership. The choice of venue is sending a message. The Kremlin has many meeting rooms, many places. The Grand Kremlin Palace is the very top. They're sending a message that Russia sees Iran as a very important ally, and they're firming up that alliance. The Russians are real big on protocol. They did not make the decision to use the Grand Kremlin Palace lightly. It was done to send both Iran and the world a message that there is this new alliance. And the message is at least partly intended for the United States and for Israel. If you attack Iran, you are attacking Russia. Remember the Kennedy Doctrine? Any attack on any nation in the Western Hemisphere is seen as an attack on the United States. Putin is turning that around on us. And Iran has announced that Russia is allowed to use Iranian military bases, and which ones they need to use will be decided on a moment-to-moment basis. Now, as you know, the end of this plan that General Wesley Clark blew the whistle on all the way back in 2005 was for the U.S. to conquer or regime change all of the oil-producing nations in the Middle East and shackle them to the U.S. dollar to prop up our failing economy, with the last nation on the list, Iran, which was supposed to be conquered in 2008. They're a little behind the timeline. And so we're starting to see the ramp up of propaganda again. Iran is this, Iran is that, Iran is that. And this one is really weird. This is coming from Russia Insider. The Islamic State is now vowing to destroy Iran for protecting the Jews. This doesn't even make any sense. ISIS is claiming Iran's tolerance for Jews is the reason for all-out war by ISIS on Iran. I swear they're making this stuff up with a dartboard. We'll be right back. The start of hour number 2. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. Now, for the longest time, I have been sharing with you a story and photos about the drug trade in Afghanistan and how under the Taliban it had all but eradicated the opium. And ever since the U.S. has gone on in, the poppies are blooming, there are bumper crops, and cheap opium is flooding into the United States of America for the American drug lords. And it's a big problem. Right now, apparently 80% of the world's opium output is consumed by Americans, both legal and illegal opiate use. We're a nation of druggies, and we're being encouraged in that direction. Every corner of every intersection, on one corner there'll be a drug store. Yes, drugs are good. Our drugs are good. The other guy's drugs are bad, but our drugs are good. You want drugs. Lots of drugs. Well, it's starting to get some attention in places other than whatreallyhappened.com. And Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov is calling out NATO for their role in the Afghan drug trafficking problem. Now, when the U.S. went into Afghanistan and the poppy started blooming, the cheap heroin was not only flowing to the United States of America, some of it was being sent into Russia. And by the way, sending addictive drugs into a foreign country is another form of covert warfare. You want to get their young people hooked on opium. It harms the gross domestic product. It limits military recruitment, so forth and so on. Russia, even back then, was saying, please stop this. You are in control on the ground in Afghanistan. Why are you not stopping this? And now Lavrov is out there saying NATO just turned a blind eye to all of this stuff. The poppies are everywhere. The opium is flowing, and NATO is clearly not interested in looking at this problem, assuming they're not actually directly involved in these criminal schemes. Well, we know for a fact that they are, because we have photos of these coalition forces, some of them wearing the United States arm patch, guarding and protecting the opium fields and actually handling the sacks of the raw opium. We're going to do a shout-out now to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. We're talking about Afghanistan and the opium coming out of there, with the connivance of NATO, with the connivance of the United States of America. Now, when this problem first surfaced, and people said, all of a sudden, there's opium coming out of Afghanistan, can't you do something about it? Remember the official U.S. government response? We have to let these farmers grow the opium poppies. We know it's bad, it's a very bad drug and chemical, but if we don't let these Afghan farmers grow the opium poppies, they've got no other means of supporting themselves. Really? What were they doing for a living when the Taliban was in charge and opium was outlawed? Why can't they go back to doing that? Because there's a lot more money in opium poppies. And I'm glad Lavrov is starting to look at this, because I have been putting this out for a long time. This is what your kids are being killed for in Afghanistan, oil and opium. We're not bringing those people democracy. We're not saving them from an evil dictatorship. Afghanistan was invaded over an oil pipeline right-of-way argument that goes all the way back to the 1990s. Now, the Taliban was open to the idea of a pipeline, but they wanted to charge a certain price for the pipeline right-of-way, knowing that pipelines can be very damaging to the immediate environment. And the oil company consortium that wanted that pipeline, they didn't want to pay the retail price or the tourist rates. And so they literally went before the United States of America, this consortium of oil companies, and they said, it'll be cheaper if we change the government in Afghanistan to one who is more conducive to the oil company interest. Now, one of the participating oil companies in this consortium was Unocal, and their representative to Congress arguing for regime change was Hamid Karzai. Following the U.S. invasion of Afghanistan, Hamid Karzai became the installed president of Afghanistan, and the oil company got their pipeline right away for pennies. Meanwhile, of course, the opium poppies started poppying, and the opium started flooding into the streets of America and Russia, and I'm glad Lavrov is calling attention to this. It's another reminder that the government of the United States of America is itself steeped deep in drug money corruption. Opium from Afghanistan, opium from Vietnam, cocaine from South America. Our government has been more corrupted by drug money than the government was corrupted by alcohol money during Prohibition. We're back in that same mess. Now, the U.S. Senate has voted overwhelmingly to support Montenegro's joining of NATO. And Rand Paul basically came on out there and said, what's the point of this? You're obligating us to yet another war in yet another foreign nation. Most Americans can't even find Montenegro on a map, and you're voting to send their kids there to fight and be killed. And they're absolutely right about that one. Now, over in Israel and Palestine, as Israel screams about evil Gazans and demographic bombs and all the rest of it, Palestine is still out there saying, we are ready to talk peace. We are willing to come to a peaceful agreement with Israel as long as they end the occupation of Palestine and recognize the right of the state of Palestine to exist, which seems perfectly reasonable to me. But Israel has never gone along with that, and therein lies the root cause of all the suffering, all the war, all the horror in that part of the world, going back for 60 years. Because the Zionists came on in, carved off part of Palestine, said, this is now Israel, you must recognize our right to exist. And Palestine came on back and said, well, we'll recognize your right to exist within your defined borders when you recognize our right to exist. And Israel's attitude was, no. You recognize our right to exist. You don't put any conditions on it. And Israel pointedly did not recognize the right of Palestine to exist. Remember Golda Meir came on out and said there's no such thing as Palestine. The anti-Semites just made it up to annoy us. And then a postcard surfaced in Golda Meir's own hand listing her address as Palestine. And readers, listeners have over the years sent me many, many coins from Palestine. So yes, there really was a Palestine. We have photos and Lumiere Brother movies about it and everything. But that's been the cause of the problem. If Israel would simply grant to their neighbors that which they demand for themselves, a right to exist, all of this bloodshed could have been avoided. But Israel's attitude is, you recognize our right to exist, and we'll eventually get around to drawing our borders somewhere. Somewhere being the Nile to the Euphrates, the Eretz Israel as described in the Torah. So Palestine's out there trying to make peace, Israel's making war, and you are paying for all of it. Now the good news is, Israel's agenda is in trouble. As you know, they're having the AIPAC policy conference, and there have been a lot of protests against it. And what was really rather reassuring to see is a lot of American Jews were protesting AIPAC, especially young American Jews. There is now a generational divide on Israel's policies toward Palestine. The younger Jews do not see any legitimate reason for what the government of Israel does to Palestine, and they're speaking out against it, despite the religious prohibition against it. And good for them, because it's time to disconnect the world's Jewish people from the actions of the government of Israel. Because Israel has gotten away with everything they've gotten away with by claiming to speak for all the world's Jewish people. So that when you criticize what Israel has done, they scream, oh, you just hate the Jews. You're an anti-Semite. You want Hitler to come back and gas the Jewish babies in the oven. But when you have American Jews, especially young American Jews out there disagreeing openly with Israel's government policies, Israel can't do that anymore. Israel can't blur the line between the actions of a government and a race of people, which they've been doing deliberately. Remember that former member of the Knesset was on Amy Goodman's show? She came on out and said, anti-Semite is a trick. Anytime somebody asks a question the government of Israel can't answer, the first thing they say is, you're an anti-Semite. We're taking that trick away from them. In part because they've used it so much, nobody cares anymore. 20 years ago, if ADL or APAC came out and said, you're an anti-Semite, and they say, oh, please take it back, take my money here, take my child for your wars, please take back that word and take back that label, grovel on the ground. These days, an Israel supporter comes on out and says, you're an anti-Semite, the response is, okay. If that's what you want to think, who cares? Nobody cares anymore about these smears. And especially with Donald Trump being proven right that a lot of this anti-Semitism is a manufactured hoax and illusion. It is all a hoax. That's how you're controlled. It's really like living in the movie The Matrix. You look at these screens, or you read the newspaper, you listen to the radio, and you think that's the real world, and it isn't. It's this very complex electronic system to put an alternate reality in front of your eyes to favor certain interests. All right, let's move on to the economic news. The Fed's Rosengren is predicting there will be 3 more rate hikes this year. All of them as ill-advised as the last one, which, as far as anybody can see, was done not for economic reasons, but for political ones, to hamstring Donald Trump's attempt at rebuilding America's infrastructure by making the cost of borrowing money for that infrastructure higher. And everybody understands a repaired infrastructure is not only going to produce more jobs, but a more efficient infrastructure is good for commerce. But this isn't about what's good for commerce, good for the economy, good for the people. It's about turf wars. It's about getting that Donald Trump, getting rid of the people's choice for president, and put in one of our people again, like Hillary Clinton. That's what this is all about, and they're willing to make decisions that are contrary to the public good, just to score points in their little faction fight. Okay. Now, as you know, Theresa May has activated Article 50. Officially, Great Britain is leaving the European Union. There'll be 2 years of transition and negotiation that they're going to try and play games with, but it's actually official as of now. The letter of transmittal has been signed and delivered to Brussels. Great Britain has activated Article 50. We are leaving, so long, and thanks for all the pointless regulation. The banks in London are informing their staff there's no reason to panic. All these dire predictions of economic implosion and devastation were just part of the campaign by the Remainers. And they're not real. And they're not going to materialize. Britain and Germany are already talking their own defense pact. Trump's going to fast-track a trade deal with the newly independent Great Britain. All of these warnings just aren't going to happen. All right, we're going to go ahead and grab a phone call. Donna in Missouri, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. I'm calling about what's happening with Vince Foster. This report that his body was exhumed.
It's a hoax. It's a hoax.
And it's been...
It's a hoax.
Is it a hoax?
It's a hoax. For one thing, it all...
May I ask... Go ahead.
Yeah, well, the first way we know that a hoax is where they claim to be exhuming the body from is not where Vince Foster is buried. And right now, the various political interests in the corporate media are trying to discredit the independent media by setting up all kinds of new websites that look like they're serious news websites, and they put out all kinds of bogus stories in the hope that we'll pick them up, and then they can come on out and say, oh, you crazy kooks, you actually thought they were going to do all this stuff. And obviously, Saturday being April Fool's Day, we all have to be on our guard. There was already another story floating around that Trump was going to fire FBI Director Comey and replace him with Trey Gowdy on April 1st, which is Saturday. So we all have to be on guard for that. But yeah, the story about Vince Foster's body being exhumed is an absolute hoax. They're just trying to jam us up with nonsense so we get distracted away from the new Watergate, Watergate 2. We need a new name for that. And that's what it is. It's all distraction. They don't want us looking at Hillary's email server. They don't want us looking at the Obama administration bugging Donald Trump's campaign. And so they're just throwing up all kinds of stuff in the hope that we'll be lured away. Vince Foster being exhumed. Chemtrails are now out there. HARP is coming back. The Loch Ness Monster and Bigfoot form a new country western band, or whatever else they're going to say.
Well, that explains why you're not flying high about this. Thanks so much, Mike.
Okay. Thank you very much. We're going to let you go. Now, as you know, one of the big issues Ukraine is dealing with. Oh, we got to take a break for commercials, and we'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. We're going to take one more phone call, then we're going to get back to the news here. Joe in Arizona. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind today?
Hello, Michael. Thanks for taking my call. I'm calling to see why me as a civilian can't do a citizen's arrest on these representatives that are representing sanctuary cities.
Well, the considerations are all practical. I mean, in theory, yes, knowing there has been a violation of Title VIII, it would be legally legitimate for a group of citizens to go on in and say, we're placing you under arrest and we're going to take you down to the prosecutor. That breaks down on 2 points. Back in the 1980s, the Supreme Court took away from the American people the right to file criminal charges against somebody. And that gave the prosecutors a huge amount of power to decide who does and does not get charged for a given crime. And that politicized that entire process. On a more practical note, obviously these people who are violating the immigration laws know they're violating the immigration laws. They know there's hostility to it, and they probably have a lot of private security around themselves who will basically club you into submission for your impertinence.
Well, any other way to make these people pay?
Vote them out of office next election. And the way you vote them out of office next election is you start working within your own precinct, your own community, county, and state to overhaul that election system, get rid of those machines, get rid of illegal immigrant voting, get rid of dead voting, and get an honest election system there. And that will restore to the American people the power to fire crooked politicians who refuse to follow the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. That's a necessary first step.
Great answers. Thanks, Michael.
All right, thanks an awful lot. Now then, one of the problems Ukraine is dealing with, along with its the failure to reacquire Crimea, the Donbass, Donetsk People's Republic, all of that, is that following the U.S.-backed coup d'etat that put Poroshenko in power, Ukraine was buying their oil and gas, mostly gas from Russia, and they had run up quite a huge bill. And not too long ago, Poroshenko basically said, well, because of the hostilities with Russia, we refuse to pay the bill. So there. And Russia was being very patient. They didn't shut the valve off. But they did take Ukraine to the High Court of London. Apparently all the payments are routing through the London Financial Center, and they went to court. And the London High Court has now ruled Ukraine must repay that $3 billion to Russia along with all accrued interest. And for Ukraine, that's a big chunk of money, and it's a big economic hit. And apparently part of this, the reason it went to the London High Court, was Ukraine's Eurobond debt is also unpaid at this time. Possibly because of this court decision, the World Bank has now delayed approval of a new loan for Ukraine until May 2nd. They're going to put it off a month. So we're going to hold off on this deal. See, right now Ukraine is soliciting new loans to pay the older loans. Ukraine is in a position where they've maxed out their credit card, and their only solution is to get a new credit card and transfer the balance. Get a new credit card, transfer the balance. Keep living off the credit cards. And they're running out of credit cards. And even though the World Bank is fully on board with the globalism agenda, there's a point that comes where they realize Ukraine is not going to succeed in reclaiming the eastern Ukrainian republics or Crimea, and they're going to cut Poroshenko off, and Ukraine is going to immediately collapse economically. And the European Union nations will get stuck with the bill. Wells Fargo has agreed to pay $110 million to settle the lawsuit over account abuses. As you know, Wells Fargo was caught encouraging their salespeople to use any means possible to get clients to buy things. Often the clients didn't even realize it had happened. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. And before we get back to the economic news here, we're going to take a phone call. Steve in British Columbia, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Nothing much. I just trying this out, and I just want to say hi. And yeah, thank you for your work. You're doing a bang-up job, and I like the blade I see in the background. That's a nice blade.
Well, that's actually just a decoration. The general rule of thumb is swords in this home are real and practical, but that one's a wall decoration, and if you were to try and swing it around, the handle would come off. But I have it because I actually did work on the first of the Schwarzenegger Conan movies, and I always wanted one of those swords, and the De Laurentiis people made us smash up the moles and the jigs and everything, so that's the best I could do.
Oh, no, you're part of the movie. Wow, cool. But nonetheless, yeah, it's nice though. Yeah, I like blades, and yeah, I've been eyeing that blade. Like, wow, that's nice. But anyways, yeah, I just want to say hi, and yeah.
Oh yeah, I like pointy, sticky things. I'm a guy. I like pointy. Claire's into jewelry, and I'm into knives and black powder firearms and things like that. I was on my college fencing team.
Oh, okay. Oh, so you're quite adept with blades then.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, I love sharpening knives and.
I can swash my buckles with the best of them, but the last time I wagged my scally in public, I was arrested.
Yeah, I think people are a little sensitive with blades. Yeah, it's just a blade. I guess it depends on the yielder, but people see it, it's like, oh!
Well, yeah, it is amazing today to see people's reactions to any weapons, not just guns, but even knives. Oh, it's a knife. And that's good. Boy, that certainly wasn't the... When I was a kid, I was a Boy Scout. You know what a Boy Scout knife was back when I was a Boy Scout? It was an 8-inch sheath hunting knife. And yes, they had the little tiny knives with the can openers and everything as well. But the Boy Scout knife was the 8-inch sheath knife. I haven't seen one of those on a Boy Scout in decades. Anyway, Steve, we're going to let you go here, Steve, because I want to get back to the news. Thank you very much for the phone call. And I love British Columbia, by the way. It's just gorgeous up there. They got an amazing, if you get to Vancouver, British Columbia, they have an amazing anthropology museum there. Do make time to see that, because it is really impressive. When Claire and I were hiding out in the Cascade Mountains in Washington State, every once in a while we would drive up to Vancouver, just because it is beautiful. And we love the place. We love the place. Now then, getting on back... Okay, getting on back to the news here, the economic news rather. There is now a first-in-the-nation settlement involving subprime auto loan securitization. Now, this is actually very significant. A unit of Banco Santander has agreed to pay $22 million in connection with what the Attorney General in Massachusetts called a first-in-the-nation settlement involving subprime auto loan securitization. Now, if you remember, all the way back in 2008, the mortgage-backed security fraud, a big part of the problem, a big reason it went out of control, was this bundling of loans broke what's called the securitization chain. In the good old days of responsible and ethical banking, if I, as a banker, were going to loan you money, I would take steps to make sure that you were economically in a position to make the loan payments, which would keep everybody happy. That there would be collateral to back it all up. But with the rise of the mortgage bundling, which was so popular they didn't have enough mortgages, and that's when they opened up the subprime mortgage market. We need mortgages. We don't care if they can pay them or not. And in that model, the person who is issuing the mortgage or the car loan doesn't worry about whether it's being repaid, because as soon as they get the signature on that loan, they turn around and resell it to the mortgage bundlers or car loan bundlers, and they break the securitization chain. And that's why so many of these mortgages in the mortgage-backed security fraud did turn out to be complete garbage. So apparently they've been doing the same thing with subprime auto loans, and they are now being sued. And so good for the Attorney General in Massachusetts for doing this, because one of the big questions people had coming out of 2008, knowing how much criminality and fraud had been going on Wall Street, why was nobody arrested? Why did nobody go to jail? Why instead did the federal government turn around and plunder the American people to come up with the cash to keep Wall Street solvent? Well, for two reasons. One, everybody in Congress was invested in those Wall Street firms that got burned in the mortgage-backed security fraud collapse. They weren't saving the country or the economy by taking all that money away from you and giving it to Wall Street. They were saving their own stock portfolios. And the second reason is because, unfortunately, our nation is no longer a capitalist nation. It is a fascist economic dictatorship. And under fascism, those who make money are allowed to keep it, and those who lose money are allowed to transfer the losses onto the general population. That's the classic definition of fascism, fascism economics. And that's not from me, that's from Benito Mussolini, who won the Olympic gold medal for being a fascist jerk. Posthumously, as it turns out. Now then, we've been talking about Westinghouse, another iconic American name, except they're not American anymore. They're owned by Toshiba, the nuclear division. And apparently they have run into trouble with their nuclear power plant business, and they're now going into bankruptcy. The good news is, and this is going to have a lot of people grinding their teeth over on Wall Street, China has just discovered a huge gold deposit inside China. They're estimating the life of this mine will be 40 years. That's how much gold is down there. They're estimating it's worth at $22 billion. And that is going to dramatically change things, especially if you remember the story from yesterday about how Russia and China are setting up a structure where brick payments are denominated in gold. No more of this funny money, paper and ink, numbers in a computer nonsense. They want a commodity-based economic system. The commodity is gold, and China just stumbled over a huge chunk of it. So let's get on over to immigration and naturalization and refugees and all that other nonsense here. And we are seeing all of these mayors who are standing up, openly defying Donald Trump over the question of the defunding of sanctuary cities. This includes Los Angeles, Chicago, and New York. They're vowing to defy Trump. Well, it's kind of an empty threat, because all Trump has to do is stop signing the checks, and that's it. The funds are cut. And Jeff Sessions is already out there saying they're getting ready to start yanking all federal funding from the sanctuary cities. And all of these mayors who are out there are in violation of Title VIII There was an article we talked about yesterday where they were saying it's time to stop calling them sanctuary cities and call them secessionist cities. Cities that have already been overrun with illegal immigrants and refugees and are now trying to be their own country where they have a right to be there and we do not. Carried to its extreme, we're talking about the balkanization of the United States. And Trump needs to get on top of that. Trump has got to start showing some muscle. That sheriff we were talking about yesterday is absolutely right. Go into these gubernatorial offices, these mayoral offices with the handcuffs, slap them on, and haul them off to federal court. Now, the open borders, people are out there saying, oh, these are wonderful folk who are coming on in. And yes, some of them have got contagious diseases that haven't been around for a long time. And yes, some are rapists. And yeah, some of them are... Yeah, but overall, they're really good people. I have an illustration of this. This is coming out of usherald.com. Apparently, there was this illegal immigrant, Roy Ortiz. And last September, he was trapped in his car during a flash flood. And he was rescued by the first responders. So far, so good. Roy Oritz is now filing a lawsuit against those first responders for $500,000 because they didn't respond quickly enough to save his miserable life. When he was asked why he was suing the people who saved his life, he was actually honest enough to say, I want the money. And apparently the image of America, that, as seen by the rest of the world, is get what you can any way you can. And that dovetails very much in with the comment I've been making recently that this lust for pieces of paper with colored ink all over them has destroyed the best qualities of what we used to think of as the American character. And I'm not anti-rich. I wouldn't mind being rich myself. There was a time in my life when I was certainly richer than I am now. But there must be a balance. Yes, let's have a business to make money. But let's make a product we can be proud of just for the pride of making a good product. Let's perform a service that really is a benefit to our community. That's capitalism. That's the correct way to do it. I don't have a problem with people, and I've said this before, I know, but I'm going to reiterate it. I don't have a problem with people like Steve Jobs, who came up with the Apple II, or my all-time favorite movie director, James Cameron, who makes wonderful movies that I will gladly give him my money to own copies of, or George Lucas, or Steven Spielberg, or the people who came up with the Raspberry Pi. And they get rich doing that because that's the way capitalism is supposed to work. My objection is with the money junkies. These diseased individuals who corrupt the system to suck wealth out of your pocket and put it into their pocket without returning anything of substantive value to our society. That's who I have a problem with. I just want to be clear on that because I get so many emails saying, oh, you just hate rich people because you're not rich. No, there's a lot of rich people I admire. Donald Trump among them, obviously. But it's time to recognize that lust for money for the sake of the money is a mental illness. It is an addiction. It is as powerful as cocaine or heroin or meth. And we should be treating it like that. Now, as I mentioned before, Theresa May has issued the official letter to the European Union activating Article 50, saying, we're out of here. Was hand-delivered to the European Council President at the same time she was addressing the House of Commons. She's calling on all of Great Britain to unite, saying that they're past the point of arguing Brexit versus Remain. Brexit won the election. The process has started. It is now time for all the British subjects to come together and work together to make the Brexit as smooth and painless as possible. She won't get them all. There are still way too many people who see their own personal fortunes as very much tied up with the European Union and the global government. Nigel Farage is, of course, obviously happy. He's out there saying he's been fighting 25 years for that day to happen. So he's very, very delighted about what's going on there. New polls over in France are showing 61% of France thinks Islam is not compatible with their society. To nobody's surprise there. And apparently there are more riots in Paris. This time it's the Chinese. Apparently the Paris police wrongfully shot a Chinese gentleman and killed him, triggered riots in the Chinese French community and a serious protest from Beijing. All of France has been turned into this flashpoint, ready to go from any direction. Now, Tim Pool got out on Twitter, and he's pointing out that he found refugees dealing illegal drugs in Athens. He pointed it out publicly and was immediately denounced as racist. Apparently, in the eyes of the New World Order globalist people, pointing out refugee crime is racist. I'm sorry, drug crime isn't a race. Illegal isn't a race. A crime is a crime is a crime is a crime. But apparently, refugees are supposed to be given a free pass. And up in Germany, they are. The German government has now ordered the German corporate media to never report if an illegal refugee is involved in a crime. They'll just say suspect without any clarification whatsoever. Now, the European Union has issued a warning to their member states that are starting to offer financial inducements for the refugees to please go back home. And some of these countries are starting to ramp up the amount they're willing to pay for these people to voluntarily leave and go back home. And the EU is saying you need to be careful. They need to conform the payments because apparently some of these migrants are hopping from EU member state to EU member state looking for the best deal. Who is currently offering the most money for me to go home? I'm going to go over there and say, yes, I'll take your money. Now, up in Germany, talk about a miraculous come-from-behind victory. Angela Merkel was going into the elections, first round leading to the chancellorship, federal state of Saar, Germany, and she was trailing badly in the polls, and amazing dead of night come-from-behind victory. She won that election by a huge, huge margin. And if you believe she won that election, honestly, I have some of Saddam's nuclear weapons to sell you. We're seeing election fraud being used all across Europe to keep the globalists in power, to block the Eurosceptics. We saw it in Norway. The British police are now saying Nigel Farage was the victim of massive election fraud. Jean-Claude Juncker is out there just declaring Le Pen is not going to win those French elections. The fix is in. We trust Diebold because Diebold guarantees the results. So, but note to Germany, we overcame election fraud to get Trump in. You can overcome election fraud to get Merkel out. We're going to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. We're talking about Angela Merkel's miraculous come-from-behind victory in some of the first round of their elections up there. We were reporting yesterday how the Eurosceptic Italexit political party is way, way ahead in the polls there. Anybody want to bet that the EU will come in and try and wreck that election as well? Remember how obvious they were during the first Scottish independence referendum? They weren't even trying to hide the fact that they were stealing that election. It was just right out there and open. And at the point where the people of Europe understand their elections have been compromised, then the contract is off. Because people are held in place, subservient to the government, on that belief that, good or bad, somehow they voted for all of this. And when they realized, no, they did not, that it was all a giant scam, well, I'm sure there's still a lot of guillotines over there in various warehouses in France. They'll probably get those out as well. Greece might actually just crash right out of the Eurozone. They're in the middle of this Grexit showdown with this bailout deadlock. Greece is absolutely out of money. They have been plundered by the European Central Bank, by the World Bank, by the IMF. Much of that debt was created through fraud between Goldman Sachs and Papandreou, but in the eyes of the money junkie bank lords, debt is holy, debt is sacrosanct. We heard this from Christine Lagarde. We don't care if the debt was created through fraud. You, the people, will work to pay it off, even though it's impossible to pay off debt to private central banks. It's designed that way. Now, there is that recognized principle of international law called odious debt. When a country falls apart, the people are only responsible for the debt that was spent on the people. War debts are not included. Money borrowed to give to another country is not included. Money borrowed to spy and oppress the people is not included. And that principle has been used by the people of countries who are going through a change of government to write off massive amounts of debt. And the people of Greece can invoke that principle because the debt is odious if they're being asked to pay for the crimes and dishonesty of their government. And the same thing applies here in the United States of America. When the crash comes, as now does seem inevitable, we need to remember we're not responsible for all of that debt. We're responsible for the debt used to repair our roads, our bridges, our rail system, our water supply, and that's just a tiny, tiny, tiny portion of the debt. Most of it was borrowed for war, for giving to Israel, and that all counts as odious debt. So Greece may just crash right out of the European Union, and that could be the trigger that brings it all apart. We'll be right back after station identification. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, hour number 3. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. Interesting little article coming on out from Sputnik News, The Colossus with Clay Feet. How the Rome Declaration exposed cracks in the European Union. And we were talking about this yesterday, where all of the heads of the member states of the European Union got together in Rome at a summit to sign this declaration about what they were going to do for the future and how great the EU would be, and all the problems are past us and we've got a bright future. And yet nothing in the declaration actually addressed the problems the EU is facing. The economic problems, not mentioned. No solutions offered. The refugee crisis, no solutions offered. And observers were saying this appears to be little more than a public relations stunt to try and convince the people of the European Union things are going to get better now, just trust us a little while longer, which is a good description of every political campaign speech we've heard here in the United States of America for the last half-century. But more and more, it's looking like the European Union is in serious trouble. I mean, when they are driven to the point of tampering with the elections of their member states to keep them from leaving, you know there's a problem. Here's a little story that just came on in. Apparently over in New York, there was a man who exposed this refugee couple that was using their food stamps, paid for by you, to bulk buy soda at the big box stores to then resell in their own little neighborhood unofficial store. And when he pointed it on out, what was going on, the woman apparently screamed, "My name is Screw America." Well, she didn't use screw, she used another word, and you can guess what it is. Remember what I said, migration is a filtering process. You are not getting the best of the people from those home countries. The people in those home countries who are doing well are going to stay. The people who are successful in their home countries are going to stay. The people who have skills in demand are going to stay. What we're getting through that filter of migration are criminals fleeing prosecution, people who couldn't make it in their home country and they're looking for a handout, or people who've got serious communicable diseases who have been told that the U.S. will give them medical treatment for free under Obamacare. That's what's going on. All right, let's grab a phone call here. Wally in New Brunswick, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Michael. What's on my mind is GMO, non-GMO. Apparently farmers have got a hate-on for cargo. Now, you'd think, okay, maybe it's because cargo will only do GMO, but apparently not. Cargo is also marketing non-GMO, and they've got the certification from the non-GMO project, so they can put the little labels on their stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess, and the farmers, the way the story reads is the farmers are all upset because now Cargill is trying to cut off their GMO product.
Well, I think that's I think that's the responsible thing to do because the GMO is turning out to be fraught with all kinds of dangers and problems. And one of the concerns we have here in Hawaii is that all of these big biotech firms are doing their test plantings out here on our islands, apparently under the theory that if something crawls out of that farm plot and starts to eat the tourists, that the mainland is going to be safe from it. And that is, of course, utterly ridiculous because when humans first showed up on these islands, the islands were already covered with all kinds of foliage and all kinds of birds that managed to make the trip all across the Pacific Ocean and get here from all over the Pacific, not just the United States. So this idea that a biological accident could be contained here to Hawaii, well, it sounds good and it looks good on a map, but it's not realistic. It's like Monsanto's 10-yard barrier around your farm will keep the pollen contained, and we know that's nonsense. We know that pollen will travel states away and contaminate plants.
Yeah. Well, here's Cargo's take on it. Cargo has identified a growing market, a growing demand for non-GMO product.
Imagine my surprise.
So Cargo's saying, well, we're going to look after those customers because we want their business too. And the best way to get their business is you get the certification. And there's only one organization in North America that certifies. I think it's the non-GMO project.
I think it's called the GMO Project, but yeah, they're very, very good and they're very trustworthy. And I'll tell you this, they're more trustworthy than the USDA's Certified Organic Program. Because when the USDA started their Certified Organic Program, they've got a little black and white icon. It's a circle and a bar, and it says USDA Certified Organic. When it first started out, a product really had to be organic to receive that certification. But over years of lobbying from various biotech firms, now USDA Certified Organic simply means we have less of the chemicals and GMO than the other brands. And so it's not really a safety warning so much as it's become another sales tool.
Exactly. I mean, organic is not non-GMO. Organic is just how you fertilize the stuff.
And also what
non-GMO
and what insecticides you spray it with as well.
Exactly. Yeah. And but non-GMO, I mean, that's cut and dry. You know, there's no ifs, ands, or buts. It's either it is or it's not. And these farmers are GMO farmers, and they're after. Well, it's not just Cargill. There are 4 or 5 companies that are doing the same thing that Cargill is doing, in that they are splitting their product line between GMO and non-GMO, and they're getting the non-GMO certification.
Well, there's a problem, but for the GMO farmers, there's an issue. Unless they literally burn their fields or allow them to lie fallow for 3 years, any non-GMO seeds they plant on their farm fields are going to get the pollen from the GMO crop that preceded it.
Exactly. Yeah. So they've got a vested interest in their fields, of course. But here's the big thing is, that the way they're going after Cargill, they've singled out Cargill, I guess, to make an example out of them, and they basically all they're doing is castigating the GMO part. Cargill has come out and said to the farmers, we're still buying GMO.
Oh, I see. I see what you're saying. The farmers are basically in the seed business. They're raising the GMO crops and selling the seed back to Cargill, and that's the argument going there. I'm wondering how much of this is actually being funded under the table by companies like Monsanto, who are just trying to get rid of any non-GMO to establish a permanent global monopoly.
Well, Monsanto's name comes up in the story.
Ah.
And I guess Monsanto, it's sort of, they're being defensive about GMO. And they're being offensive. Well, they came out, they actually said, they tried to discredit the non-GMO project.
Yeah, they've been trying to do that, yes.
Yeah. So the article is in Bloomberg. It's well worth a read.
Yeah, okay, I'll take, if you'll send that to me, I will definitely take a look at that, okay?
Okay, I'll send you the Financial Post, because it's the same story. Financial Post, they give credit to Bloomberg for the story.
Okay. I'll take a look at that. All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you... Okay, I'm sorry.
What do you want on the, what do you want in the subject line?
Just say Cargill.
Okay, you got it.
All right.
It's on its way shortly.
All right, thank you very much.
Michael.
We're going to let you go here, get on back to the news. Now then, as you know, for all you tennis fans out there, we're coming up on the Wimbledon tennis match. And I've never been a big one for spectator sports, but I did do a little tennis in my youth. In recent years, there has been a very popular photograph making the rounds in the tennis community, if you will. It's called the Athena Tennis Girl. And it's a shot of a very lovely young lady who apparently was wearing a thong underneath her tennis dress. And she got an itch and reached back to scratch, and a photographer got it and shows her shapely derriere. And it's a very popular image all over the world. And Wimbledon was thinking they were going to use this image as part of a much larger display of tennis art, tennis photography from history. And immediately the feminists started screaming, "You can't do this. You can't show this shapely female tennis player's rear end. It's sexist. It's this. It's that." And Wimbledon, unfortunately, has backed down. They're going to take it down. Have you ever noticed that all the feminists who are screaming that we shouldn't be looking at naked women are women you would not want to see naked? I think they're jealous is really what's going on. It has nothing to do with sexism. They're feeling attention deprived. Nobody wants to look at them. So they're going to go on the attack against the girls that people do want to look at. I remember a few years ago in Hollywood, well, more than a few years ago, it was while I was still working in Hollywood, which would be 25, 26 years ago. And there was a campaign out there to get beer companies to stop using attractive female models in their commercials. And the slogan of this campaign was, "Don't use our cans to sell your cans." And as it turned out, the women behind this campaign were not the sort of young ladies who would be shown in beer commercials to begin with. So it wasn't really their cans that were being used to sell the beer company's cans. And of course, my response at that point was that these so-called feminists were depriving these actresses and models of an income, of a livelihood, because that's what these girls do. They have worked their lives learning their trade, learning how to act, going to health clubs, and just turning their bodies into something people want to look at. And the feminists were out there saying, "Don't do that. Don't look at them. Don't look at them." I really do think they're jealous. I think that's what's going on. Now then, interesting little story. Apparently, over in France, workers at a Coca-Cola factory discovered $56 million worth of cocaine inside a shipment of flavoring components from Costa Rica, which is not entirely inappropriate when you remember the history of Coca-Cola, because Coca-Cola actually began as what was called a patent medicine. And cocaine was a big part of its original formulation. The pause that refreshes. And then, of course, cocaine was outlawed, and Coca-Cola had to rebrand. They took the cocaine out of the coca leaves. In fact, the Coca-Cola company is the largest supplier of medical cocaine. And they had to change their advertising away from this'll pick you up to it's a fashion trend. Now then, you remember not too long ago there was a big stink where operatives got inside of Planned Parenthood with hidden video cameras and exposed them for not only encouraging women to have abortions as opposed to give birth to the child and put it up for adoption, and then turned around and were carving up these babies to sell for parts, which a lot of people found very, very shocking, including yours truly. And apparently Planned Parenthood has called upon their political cronies in California to get charges brought against the activists who exposed what they were doing. So nothing bad happened to Planned Parenthood, and the people who brought out what Planned Parenthood was doing, chopping up babies and selling the parts, are looking at 15 felonies, and it's clearly politically motivated. I remember when Black Lives Matter was out there screaming about, the police killed this black man and the police killed that black man. Planned Parenthood is dusting off blacks thousands at a time. Why aren't you complaining about that? Margaret Sanger, who started Planned Parenthood, intended it to be focused on certain minorities she felt were too prevalent in the American society. And by the way, Hillary Clinton's a big admirer of Margaret Sanger. Now, let's talk about the Arctic. And I'm sorry, Al Gore, yes, it is still filled with ice. China is now throwing their hat into the ice rink, as it were, saying that they're ready to play a major role in developing the Arctic. There's a lot of good stuff up there, a lot of oil. It's very hard to get at because there is no land up there, and the Arctic Abyssal Sea is very, very deep indeed. But China is getting ready to go on up there and avail themselves of the resources that basically fall in the triangle between the northern border of China and the North Pole. And there's already a big fight over who owns the Arctic. Now, common sense would say countries that border the Arctic, draw a line from your borders to the North Pole, that's your part of the Arctic Sea, but we're already seeing the U.S. is claiming to have a much larger chunk, Europe wants a much larger chunk, Russia wants a much larger chunk. We're actually going to have war up in the Arctic, the way we're going. Now, apparently, there is a new liquefied natural gas tanker that is built to also be an icebreaker. In other words, this ship is going to be, it's designed to carry liquefied natural gas from gas wells operating in the Arctic back and forth, even through the ice pack itself. That's a very telling indicator that, yes, the race for the resources of the Arctic is definitely on. We're going to take a phone call. Wes in Idaho, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hello, Mike. Wanted to point out that this Friday there's going to be a big protest in D.C., a march on the Capitol about vaccinations with Robert Kennedy speaking, as well as Del Bigtree, the maker of vaccination the video Vaxxed and Barbara Lowe Fisher. Want to point that out. Also, Mike, do you know where, on the subject of drugs, do you know where we get the English word pharmacy comes from?
Enlighten us, please.
From the Greek word pharmakia, which means sorcery, witchcraft, and poison and magic. In the book of Revelation, the word sorcery appears a number of times, and the original Greek manuscript is the word pharmakia, which once again is sorcery, witchcraft. These drugs, what they are is all patented chemicals that did not exist until their patent, and the body does not recognize them.
Yes.
The body recognizes garlic or hawthorn or whatever herbs, but it does not recognize these drugs, and that's why they're always side effects, direct effects.
Yes. I call the principle coevolution. We've evolved with the same biochemistry as these other natural treatments. These artificial synthetic chemicals, we've never been exposed to them before, and our bodies really do not know how to handle them properly.
And never will.
Well, yeah, but another 2 million years of evolution, they might. I'm not holding my breath. Wes, I gotta catch off. Wes, I gotta catch off. Gotta take a break for commercials. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. Now, do you remember Huma Abedin, Hillary Clinton's very close associate during the campaign? And Huma is married to Anthony Weiner, a former congressman who was disgraced when his habit of sexting underage girls was made public. And having learned nothing from his downfall, he's still been at it, to the point where the New York Police Department has an active investigation against him for doing it again. And, of course, nothing really... Hillary's campaign was trying to protect him. Apparently, there's a lot of pedophilia in Washington, D.C. that's being protected institutionally, and there's nothing new about that. Remember the Franklin scandal. That one went all the way to the White House itself, and it was absolutely shut down. Now, I still think Pizzagate was a setup to discredit anybody who was investigating the diddling of little children by our elected leadership. But the problem is definitely there, and it's definitely major. Now, in the course of examining Anthony Weiner's laptop, the NYPD found State Department emails, which were not supposed to be there, and that is what forced James Comey to reopen the investigation shortly before the election. And then 2 days later he said, nothing there, investigation closed down again. Since then, it has now come on out that there were, in fact, State Department emails on that laptop which had not been turned over in response to the congressional investigation. And the NYPD and the New York FBI are apparently, they're tired of Comey's interference and obstructionism. They're starting to go public. Now, Judicial Watch today released almost 1,200 pages of these State Department records, including previously unreleased Hillary Clinton email exchanges. And they found additional instances of Hillary Clinton sending classified information through unsecured emails and offering special favors from the State Department to donors, either to the Hillary Clinton campaign or to the Clinton Foundation. And as Donald Trump is out there saying, why isn't Congress looking at that? Why isn't the corporate media reporting that? Now, over at Apple, there's a little bit of a controversy going on because 5 years ago, somebody put together a very simple iPhone application that would send you a push notification every time a U.S. drone strike was reported in the news. Apple rejected the application 3 times, refused to carry it in the iTunes stores, saying it was excessively objectionable or crude content. And it's hard to imagine what's objectionable or crude about it. It's just a notification. U.S. has drone struck here. Obviously, the U.S. government objects to this. They don't want you to know about all these war crimes going on, because most of these drone strikes are taking place in countries with which we are not officially at war. Well, after a total of 12 rejections, Apple finally accepted the app to put it on the iTunes store. Everybody was celebrating freedom of speech. Apple then abruptly deleted it yet again. Probably got a call from somebody over at the Pentagon saying, "You can't do this. It's making us look bad. That's the penultimate crime. We're going to go on committing war crimes, but nobody's supposed to talk about it." Now, if you are an iPhone user, there's yet another malware making the rounds. It's a ransomware, but the good news is it is fake. When you are using the browser on the handset, you will get a pop-up screen that says you are accessing illegal pornography or you're pirating copyrighted music, and in order to be allowed access again, you have to send in a ransom. And the ransom is basically £100 or $100 in the form of an iTunes gift card, where you will buy the gift card, and then you will send the code on the card via a text message to a mobile number. Now, there's a good side to this. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. We're talking about this latest ransomware. It's making ways around iPhones. And apparently, you're using the browser. You'll get this screen that covers the whole phone. And it says you've been caught accessing illegal pornography, or you're pirating copyrighted content, and you have to pay an online fine, meaning a ransom, which consists of you have to go out and you have to buy an expensive iTunes gift card and then text the code number on the card, which is what you need to actually access it, to a designated mobile number. Now, this is coming from the security firm Lookout. But what they've discovered is the ransomware isn't actually locking up your computer. It's a fake. And if you just clear the browser cache, it goes away. And where is the NSA in all of this? Now, the FCC has issued another warning about scam callers who try and get you to say the word yes. And apparently it's a voice signature that they're recording, and how they're using it. I was always wondering, what can just the word yes do? Apparently for credit cards that are linked to telephone computer systems where you can do transactions over the phone, the way they verify that that's really you on the other end of the line is they get you to say the word yes, and they have a voice print of you already doing that. So if you've never set one of these up, you are immune from this. But apparently this is a scam, and it's continuing. And again, nobody seems able to do a thing about it, other than issue a warning, which we issued the warning on this scam weeks ago. I guess the FCC was too busy processing my General Mobile radio service license. Now, here's an interesting article. This is out of 12160.info, and it's talking about what's going on over at Cisco. Now, when WikiLeaks started dumping the Vault 7 documents, it indicated how the CIA was compromising certain systems, and some of them were Cisco. Now, Cisco has launched a major effort to close the gaps. They are retasking engineers. They're taking people off of other longer-term projects and saying, you go on over, you work on this right now. They're trying to close all of these because every exploit the CIA installs in a system is an open door for cyber criminals to come on in. Far from making our IT infrastructure more secure, the actions of the CIA and the NSA are actually leaving us wide open to cybercrime. No wonder it's just exploding completely out of control. So Cisco is working on closing this up and sending out patches for their various routers and other equipment. And they're asking a very important question. Why did we have to learn about this from WikiLeaks? Why was the government not telling us to be very, very careful that some of these spy tools targeting supposedly criminals and terrorists, who we already proved are immune from the NSA's code breakers, leaving it wide open for the criminals? Cisco is asking a legitimate question, and they're validating an important point. We need to pay attention to what's coming out of WikiLeaks or any other whistleblower. We're not going to know anything that's going on if we continue to listen to the government spokespeople or corporate media or the CIA or NSA spokespeople. Their business is to lie you into going along with what they're doing. WikiLeaks has done a tremendous service leaking these documents because the involved companies are now working to close these loopholes yet again. All right, we're going to go ahead and grab a phone call. Mateus in Canada, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Michael. I've been a faithful listener the whole time, but my work schedule overlaps in your show. If my sound quality is too bad, you're just hang up on me. I won't take it personal.
Mateus, you're not calling me from your workplace, are you?
No, I'm not.
Oh, okay, good.
I'm on a break.
Good.
I'm on a legitimate lunch break. Hey, I invented a new funny name for a Democrat.
Yes?
How about this one? Okay. Demon crap.
I hate to break it to you. I've heard that before.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Oh, I was sure I made that up.
Sorry.
It's so funny. Every time I'm so immature, I crack up laughing every time I say demon crap. Anyway, okay, regarding privacy, you know how people say, oh, well, you might have something to hide, and if you want your privacy, maybe you're guilty. You know that whole?
Yeah.
Stupid line? Okay, well, this is my feedback. It's like, why do you own curtains for your house?
That's a good response.
That's a good question for these people.
That's a good response.
Yeah. Oh, well, how about this one? I got another one. Why do you close the door to the bathroom?
That's another good one. That's another good one.
Look, criminal. Yeah. Why do you close the door? Why are not all shower curtains transparent? Like, there's an entire industry for window covering. Obviously, we all have a legitimate need for privacy.
Boy, you've hit the nail right on the head. You've hit the nail right on the head.
Yeah. It's like we're not criminals if I don't want my genitalia to be witnessed by the next person. Yeah, there's a stall divider. I want some privacy when I'm going pee. I'm not a criminal. This is so ridiculous. Anyway, okay, that's one topic.
Well, before you go on to the other one, you also need to remind these people that the U.S. government has been caught stealing business secrets from law-abiding American citizens using this technology and giving it to their good buddies, and that's another reason why we should have a right to privacy.
Exactly. Okay, regarding the Netherlands vote.
Yes.
That was like a. Okay, so the way that the headlines are explaining it, it's like one headline was that people came out en masse to stop the spread of populism. Okay? So what that means.
Oh, my goodness.
What that means is that the people voted to stop the people from being powerful. And you gonna buy that? You believe that?
No, it's utter nonsense. Like I said earlier in the show, I think they're making this stuff up with a dartboard.
Yeah, I love your dartboard one. Like, Middle East, Syria, depleted uranium. By the way, that's so evil. That depleted uranium, like, oh my God. For anybody who's religious, that's so obviously evil. Anyone who's not religious, it's just so obviously.
I'm not religious. I think it's the most evil thing possible. Listen, Mateus, we're running out of time, so you had one more point to make, and then I got to go to another call.
Okay. So my other point is I'm going to give away a free genius idea. Whoever can develop it. This is to defeat the comment section censorship that's all over, that's spreading out.
Yes.
So all the publications removing their comment section. So here's a free idea. So what you do is you start up a website that all it does is it provides a place to comment on every single story that's currently being covered by Drudge Report, for example.
It's called freerepublic.com.
Pardon?
It's called freerepublic.com.
Okay.
All right, Mateus.
So I can go read a story about the New York Times from Drudge Report, and they won't let me comment, but I can go to freerepublic.com, and then they'll have a link to that story where I can comment.
They will. Now, there is also a little bit of liberal bias there, but it's not as obvious or heavy-handed as the corporate media. Anyway, Mateus, this is a really bad phone connection. I'm having trouble understanding you. We're going to let you go, and we're going to switch over to Fran in Washington State. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha nui nui, Michael.
Aloha nui nui nui.
Hey, about privacy, and you keep saying, well, in terms of government, to make them act like a dictatorship where everybody can see. Well, it's very, very obvious at this point that our Congress critters, and, you know, my senators from Washington State did not vote to give away our privacy, but our Republican in the House just rolled right over. So it's like, obviously, these Congress critters are not working for their constituents. They've all been bought off.
Yes, and as long as we tolerate a crooked election system in this country, then these senators and representatives and presidents will not feel that they have any obligation to the voters at all, because it doesn't matter what the voters vote. It's who counts the vote is going to pick the leaders.
Yeah. And then one quick comment about, quote, refugees and migrants, unquote.
Yes.
Yeah. We made a mess of their countries. Here they are. Payback's a bitch.
Yeah, it really, really is. That may be a big part behind all the violence and everything, is now that they're here in the countries that sponsored the destruction of their home, they're going to start raping and robbing and setting fires and everything. But the open border people don't want to see that. Anyway, listen, Fran, going to let you go here. Got some news I got to get to before the top of the hour. Talking about computers and security and privacy. And by the way, I loved Mateus's comment. Why do you have curtains in your windows? Why do you close the bathroom door? Why is the shower curtain or shower door on your shower opaque? It's a very, very good point. But again, we do know this government is stealing information from you, the law-abiding American citizen, for their own personal profit. I've lost track of the number of government agents who've actually been charged for taking information that they acquire, looting through people's computers, and using it to commit insider trading on the stock market. And for every one they've actually caught, I assume there's probably a couple of hundred more who got away with it. Now, there's another article over here in Blacklisted News called Mission Creep, and it's talking about these new devices you have in your home that respond to voice command. Now, they're picking on Google's home device. And according to Dr. Philip Doty, who's Associate Dean of the School of Information at the University of Texas, privacy advocates are right to be concerned, especially following the revelation that the CIA hacked Samsung smart TVs to record private conversations. Did they do the same thing to Google? In all probability, they don't want anything to not be part of their surveillance. So these devices may not turn on until you say Siri or Google or Alexa, but they're still listening all the time, and you don't know what it is they're doing with what they're recording. I'm not going to have one of those things in my home. Ridiculous here. All right, now then, remember the Mirai botnet? And apparently there is a new variant of the Mirai IoT malware, and it's capable of launching application layer attacks rather than simply flooding targeted sites with junk traffic. And this new botnet has already been used to hit a U.S. college with a 2-day-long attack last month. And apparently a big part of the problem is the Mirai source code has been made publicly available on the dark web, so that now we have our little script kiddies in the basement of their parents' home who are playing with one of the most potent malwares out there. Now, apparently, somebody has come up with, for all of us nostalgia freaks, and boy, a lot of them are surfacing ever since I started talking about the Raspberry Pi. But apparently there is a new TRS-80 emulator. For those of you who got the Radio Shack computers and you missed them, and it runs the classic Model 3 TRS-80 on a Windows computer. Why? I'm sorry, I mean, I was part of that generation, and I had zero respect for the TRS computers. In fact, most people I knew called them the trash 80s. Now, Commodore 64 emulator? Maybe. I got a lot of feedback about the Raspberry Pi. And people writing in saying, reminds them of the days when computers were fun. And I agree. And a lot of members have posted links to pages showing what people are doing with this. When you can buy a full Linux computer for chump change, all of a sudden you start thinking about cool things to do with it. And it really is a fun gizmo. Now, I did go back to eBay, and I found the page for the seller that I bought my Raspberry Pi Zero kit from. And I paid about $30 for it. And some of them will go up with more powerful versions of the Pi and more options and everything will go up to about $100. But I paid $30 for it, and that got me the Pi, the adapters, the power supply, case, and so forth and so on. And I got it running with almost no trouble whatsoever. Now, you do have to download the operating system and put it onto a micro SD card and shove it in there before it'll work. But there's all kinds of websites that have the instructions. It's really very, very simple to get this thing going. And a lot of people are doing weird, wonderful, crazy things with it. It is a craze. Apparently the Raspberry Pi is now the world's third most popular computer. And I'm sure Windows is already saying, we have to get Windows 10 onto that Raspberry. Death to Linux. Absolutely not. Getting on back to the world of political correctness, apparently a student did a really good report for a class, but got their grade docked because they used the word mankind. Oh, it's not PC. You're not supposed to use gender-specific language. We're going to mark you down. Forget about the merits of the paper. Forget about its conclusions and its academic quality. You used a bad word, therefore you're going to be marked down. This PC stuff has gone way, way, way too far. And we're breeding a generation of people whose entire sense of self-worth rests in always finding things to be offended by. And that's how they value themselves. I'm important. I found something to complain about today. We'll be right back with our last segment. I have just had an inspiration here. I think all of these liberal snowflakes in the United States of America who are screaming that Trump is not their president and they are bemoaning the loss of the liberal dream, I think we ought to crate them all up and send them to Sweden. Because Sweden is the liberal paradise on earth. They have open borders. The refugees are pouring on in. They're hiding the fact that the refugees have turned Sweden into the rape capital of the world. And even Grand Tour, the Amazon Live show by Jeremy Clarkson, James May, and Richard Hammond, formerly of Top Gear, When they were in Sweden, even they were making jokes about all the carless areas and just the liberal agenda there. They're coming up on a vote that will mandate everybody in Sweden get tons and tons of vaccinations. And now, Sweden's feminist government makes men's violence against women a compulsory subject at university. You will sit there and you will hear how men are beating up women. We went through this in the 1990s in the United States. The rape crisis, the violence crisis, and it turned out, actually, again, it was all fiction. When the numbers finally came in, the violence between men and women who were white was basically equal. The women were just as abusive as the men. I know my first wife cracked my cast iron fry pan against the back of my head. You have no idea how long it takes to properly cure a cast iron fry pan, I might add. And they found that in the black community, women were more violent than the men. But in Sweden, we're going to have a class about men's violence against women. I can just see the graduates of Sweden's universities trying to get a job. Well, can you run a computer? No, I majored in men's violence against women. Well, can you fix a car? No, I majored in men's violence against women. Do you have any kind of a useful skill that we should pay you for? No, you should pay me because I'm an expert on men's violence against women. Yeah, and we're seeing the same problem here. The colleges have become these liberal indoctrination centers, and they're not teaching practical skills. They're not teaching the basics. Math, science, engineering, architecture. They're too busy with the fluffy subjects. History of white male oppression. The white zone where you may be guilty. The white guilt confession booth. I mean, it really is bizarre. If I had been fortunate enough to be a parent, to have a child, which was one of my life's ambitions, and it never materialized, if I had a kid, I would tell him, don't bother going to college. It's a waste of time and money. You'll graduate hideously in debt with a totally useless degree. Start a business now. Look at some of the most successful people in our society. Steven Spielberg, Steve Jobs. They both quit school to start their companies, their businesses. They never completed college. All right, there's the music. Time for me to get out of here. We'll be back tomorrow, Thursday, here on the Republic Broadcasting Network. Please spread the word of whatreallyhappened.com, Republic Broadcasting, everywhere you can on social media. We're in a fight for the truth. We're in a fight for the future of the United States of America. We're in a fight for the future of the entire planet Earth. We'll be back tomorrow. Aloha, America.